Welcome to this channel. At the sum of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories for you. Subscribe. The twin moons of Caldera 5 hung low in the sky, their pale blue light bathing the alien jungle in an eerie glow. The thick canopy of iridescent leaves shimmered under the moon's gaze, casting strange shadows that danced across the jungle floor. The air was thick with the hum of exotic insects and the distant calls of creatures unseen. Yet, cutting through the natural sounds of the jungle was the steady, mechanical hum of an approaching convoy, a procession of sleek hovercrafts gliding silently above the river's edge. At the heart of the convoy, seated atop an opulent floating throne-like vehicle, was Princess Zyra of the Volari Dominion. Her long, silver hair, braided with shimmering threads of platinum, cascaded down her back, and her piercing violet eyes surveyed her surroundings with cold detachment. She was young by her people's standards, but the weight of centuries of royal lineage rested heavily on her slender shoulders. Her iridescent gown shimmered as if woven from the light of distant stars, a symbol of her unchallenged power and authority. Behind her, tethered to the rear of the hovercraft in a heavy, ornate cage, was her pet, a creature few in the galaxy had ever seen. The Critishan lion was a rare beast, bred exclusively for royalty. Its massive, muscular body was covered in golden fur that shimmered with threads of silver, its eyes glowing with an unnatural violet hue that matched the princess's own. The creature, though majestic, was restless, pacing within the confines of its cage, its movements jerky and anxious. The river beside the convoy had grown louder, more turbulent, as it approached a series of dangerous rapids. The Critishan growled low in its throat, sensing the water's power and the approaching danger. It was no mere animal, it was intelligent, bred for loyalty and battle, but even it could sense that something was wrong. From her seat at the front of the convoy, Zyra barely glanced back at the creature. She had long since grown tired of it. Once, the Critishan had been a symbol of her dominance, a rare and exotic gift presented to her at her coronation. But over time, the novelty had worn off. To her, it was just another trinket, a living relic of her royal status. The beast let out a low, rumbling growl, shaking its cage violently as the hovercraft veered too close to the river's edge. Its paws slid against the smooth metal floor of the cage, trying to maintain balance, but the sudden shift caused the entire vehicle to lurch. The roar of the river grew louder, more ominous. "Control that thing," Zyra ordered lazily, her voice sharp with impatience. One of her attendants, a tall, slender Volari soldier in gleaming silver armor, moved to the cage and jabbed at the Critishan with a long, electrified rod. The beast roared in pain, its violet eyes flashing with a mixture of fury and fear. "Pathetic creature," the soldier muttered under his breath. Zyra's lip curled in disdain as she watched the scene unfold. Her mind was already elsewhere, thinking of the political meetings awaiting her back at the capital. She had no time to be concerned with a creature that had outlived its usefulness. Suddenly, disaster struck. The hovercraft hit a submerged rock, tilting violently to one side. The cage, already unsteady, tipped over the edge of the hovercraft's platform and crashed into the river below. The metal bars creaked as they hit the water, and for a moment, the Critishan was submerged beneath the surface. Zyra turned her head, her eyes narrowing as she observed the scene with mild interest. The golden lion thrashed in the water, the weight of the cage dragging it down as it struggled against the current. Its roars were drowned out by the sound of rushing water, and its once proud form was now pitiful, barely visible in the swirling chaos of the river. "Stop the convoy," one of the attendants called out, scrambling to get closer to the edge. But Zyra raised a hand, silencing him with a single gesture. "No," she said coldly. "Leave it." The attendant froze, his mouth hanging open in shock. "But, Your Highness, it's your Critishan." Zyra turned her icy gaze toward him. "It is no longer of use to me. If it cannot endure a simple fall, it is unworthy of the royal crest." Her tone was final, as if she were speaking of an inanimate object, not a living creature that had served her for years. Without further protest, the convoy resumed its course, leaving the trapped Critition behind, thrashing desperately in the raging waters. As the hovercraft sped away, the creature's violet eyes locked onto the retreating figures of the royal entourage. Confusion, pain, and betrayal flashed across its face as it struggled to free itself from the cage's grasp. Its powerful muscles strained, but the current was too strong, and the weight of the cage dragged it further down into the river's depths. The jungle grew quieter as the convoy disappeared from view, and the only sounds that remained were the rushing water and the fading roars of the drowning lion. Far away from the riverbank, Zyra leaned back in her seat, her eyes already forward, fixed on the horizon. She had made her decision, and in her mind, the Critition was already forgotten. But deep in the jungle, fate had other plans. Sergeant Darius Kane crouched low beneath the thick canopy of Caldera 5, his fatigues blending with the shadows of the dense jungle. His senses were honed, every sound and movement captured by years of experience in hostile environments. The Earth Alliance had deployed him to this far-flung planet to monitor the Volari Dominion's movements, a job that was becoming increasingly tense as political relations between humans and the alien empire crumbled. The jungle was alive with strange, otherworldly sounds, chirps, screeches, and the rustle of the planet's alien wildlife. Darius wiped the sweat from his brow, his dark skin glistening under the humid air. His sharp brown eyes scanned the horizon, always alert, always prepared for an ambush. Despite the beauty of this alien world, it was hostile, unpredictable, and often deadly. He adjusted the rifle slung across his back and pulled out a small ration pack, settling on a moss-covered rock beside a calm river. The rhythmic flow of the water was soothing, a rare moment of peace in an otherwise chaotic world. He took a bite of the stale nutrient bar, grimacing at the taste, but he barely cared anymore. Field rations were a small price to pay for survival. Suddenly, a distant sound reached his ears, carried by the wind, something out of place in the natural symphony of the jungle. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of metal crashing into water, followed by an eerie, low-pitched roar that sent a chill up his spine. Darius stood up, his hand instinctively going to his rifle. His instincts told him something was wrong. He jogged toward the sound, following the river downstream. As he drew closer, the roar grew louder, more frantic. His heart pounded in his chest as he rounded a bend in the river, and then he saw it. A massive creature, unlike anything he had ever seen before, was caught in the river's raging currents. A giant metal cage was half submerged, and inside, a lion-like alien thrashed in panic, its golden fur shining even beneath the water. The beast's violet eyes, far too intelligent for an ordinary animal, were wide with fear as it struggled to stay afloat. The heavy cage dragged it deeper and deeper into the current, and it was quickly losing the fight. Without thinking, Darius sprang into action. He dropped his rifle and tore off his utility vest, diving headfirst into the river. The icy water hit him like a shock, but adrenaline surged through his veins, numbing the cold as he swam hard toward the creature. He could see the lion's powerful muscles trembling with exhaustion, its strength fading fast as the river continued to pull it under. Darius reached the cage and grabbed onto the metal bars, pulling with all his might to steady it. The current fought him every step of the way, trying to sweep both him and the beast downstream. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed in protest, but he didn't let go. He wouldn't let this creature die out like this. "Come on, buddy, stay with me." Darius grunted, his voice drowned out by the roaring water. The lion's eyes met his for a brief moment. They were filled with pain, but also something else, recognition. It understood that Darius was trying to help. Summoning the last of his strength, Darius managed to wrench the cage open, bending the weakened bars just enough for the creature to squeeze through. The lion let out a soft growl of relief as it clawed its way out of the metal trap and scrambled to the shore. Darius followed close behind, his body aching from the effort as he dragged himself onto the riverbank. Both man and beast lay there for a few moments, gasping for breath. The lion, though weak and trembling, stood up first. It shook its massive body, sending water flying from its silver-streaked mane. Darius, still lying on his back, watched in awe as the creature turned to face him, towering over him like a god from another world. For a tense moment, Darius wasn't sure what would happen next. This was no ordinary lion, it was an alien predator, powerful enough to tear him apart if it wanted to. But instead of attacking, the lion lowered its head and sniffed at Darius's hand. Slowly, cautiously, Darius reached out and placed his hand on the creature's soaked fur. The lion made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a purr, and nudged his hand with its nose. "Looks like I just made a friend," Darius muttered, a small grin forming on his face. He sat up slowly, still marveling at the sheer size of the animal. The lion, no, this Critishan, as Darius remembered from his briefings, was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its coat shimmered like liquid gold, and its violet eyes held a depth of intelligence that was unnerving. This was no ordinary alien pet, it was something far more. The creature stepped closer, nudging Darius again, this time more insistently. He realized it wasn't just grateful, it was bonding with him. All right. Easy there, big guy," Darius said, pushing himself to his feet. The lion kept close to him, following his movements as if they were already connected by an invisible thread. The Critishan, once a symbol of royal pride, now stood beside a human soldier, and Darius felt the weight of that bond settle over him. This was no ordinary animal, and he wasn't just rescuing a helpless creature. He had saved something precious, something royal, though he didn't yet understand the full extent of it. The sun was setting, casting the jungle in a soft, orange glow, and Darius knew they couldn't stay here for long. He had no idea of who the Critishan belonged to, or why it had been abandoned, but it didn't matter now. It was his responsibility. He had saved its life, and in return, it seemed to have chosen him as its new master, or perhaps something more. "Guess I need to name you," Darius mused aloud, looking into the lion's glowing violet eyes. "How about Ghost?" The lion tilted its head slightly, as if considering the name. After a moment, it rumbled in approval, its deep growl vibrating through the air. "Ghost it is, then," Darius said with a grin, patting the creature's side. "Let's get out of here, buddy." As the two walked deeper into the jungle, side by side, Darius couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in a profound way. This Critishan, this lion with eyes like starlight, had become more than a pet. Ghost was something special, something powerful, and Darius had a feeling that together, they were just getting started. And somewhere, far away, the princess who had abandoned her prized Critishan continued on her way, oblivious to the fact that the creature she had discarded had now found a new, far more loyal companion. The days following the rescue passed in a blur of discovery. Darius, Kane, and Ghost, his newly adopted Critishan lion, moved through the dense jungles of Caldera 5 with a quiet understanding, their bond deepening with every shared moment. Darius had seen combat on dozens of planets, had faced dangers and enemies that tested his strength and willpower, but nothing could have prepared him for the unexpected partnership with this magnificent creature. Ghost was no ordinary animal. Its intelligence was startling, almost unsettling at times. It didn't just follow Darius out of instinct, it anticipated his movements, seemed to understand his commands without needing words, and in some strange way, they seemed to be connected on a deeper, almost instinctual level. Darius had never believed in the old myths of telepathy between humans and animals, but with Ghost, there was something different. It wasn't words exchanged, but shared intentions, subtle signals in the way they moved together. At first, Darius had kept his distance, unsure of what to make of the creature's loyalty. After all, Ghost was the former pet of a Volari princess, a member of a race known for its ruthless superiority complex and cold detachment. He had no doubt Ghost had once served that cold-blooded princess with as much loyalty as it now showed him. But every day, Ghost seemed to prove that it had made its choice. The Critishan had chosen Darius as its companion, not because it was commanded to, but because it wanted to. Their first true test came not long after Ghost had fully recovered from the ordeal in the river. Darius had been conducting routine reconnaissance along the jungle's northern perimeter, gathering data on Volari troop movements for the Earth Alliance. The war between humanity and the Volari Dominion had been simmering for years, but Caldera 5 had recently become a hotbed of covert skirmishes, with both sides jostling for strategic control of the planet's resources. That morning, Darius had ventured deeper into enemy territory than usual, taking Ghost along for company. The two moved in silence, Ghost's massive paws making no sound as they padded across the damp jungle floor. Darius, rifle slung across his back, scanned the environment, always alert. Ghost's keen senses often gave him an edge. Darius had learned to trust the creature's instincts. Whenever Ghost tensed or its ears flicked toward an unusual sound, Darius knew to stop and listen. Suddenly, Ghost froze, its violet eyes narrowing as it stared into the thick undergrowth ahead. A low growl rumbled deep in its throat, barely audible but enough to make Darius halt in his tracks. He crouched low, unslinging his rifle, and peered through the dense foliage. "Volari?" Darius whispered. Ghost didn't respond with words, but its growl deepened, confirming Darius's suspicion. Something was up ahead, something dangerous. Moving stealthily, Darius crept forward, Ghost by his side. They reached the edge of a small clearing, and there, among the thick trees, Darius spotted a Volari scout team. There were 4 of them, clad in a shimmering silver armor, their angular helmets concealing their faces. They were setting up some kind of equipment, likely a signal relay or a scanning device. If they finished their task, they could relay the human presence on this side of the jungle back to their fleet, a strategic disaster for the Earth Alliance. Darius's heart quickened. He knew he couldn't let them complete their mission, but it was just him and Ghost. For heavily armed Volari soldiers would be a tough fight, even with the element of surprise. He looked down at Ghost, who was watching the Volari soldiers with the same intense focus. There was no fear in the lion's eyes, only determination. Darius smiled grimly, realizing that Ghost was ready, eager even. "We take them down quick," Darius whispered, knowing Ghost could sense his intention. "I'll distract them. You go in for the kill." Ghost's tail flicked once, the only sign of its readiness. With a deep breath, Darius checked his rifle, took aim, and fired. The shot hit the nearest Volari soldier in the chest, sending him crashing backward into the dirt. The other 3 whirled around, their weapons already raised, but Darius was faster. He fired off another round, grazing one soldier's shoulder, before ducking back behind a tree for cover. As the Volari soldiers barked orders at each other in their harsh alien tongue, Ghost moved. The lion's powerful muscles coiled, and in a blur of golden fur, it leapt into the fray. It moved with terrifying speed, silent as a shadow, its claws extended as it collided with the nearest soldier. The Volari barely had time to scream before Ghost's massive jaws clamped down on his helmet, crushing it with a sickening crunch. The other 2 soldiers turned their weapons toward Ghost, but Darius was already on the move. He emerged from his cover, firing rapidly, keeping the soldiers off balance. One of his shots found its mark, dropping another Volari to the ground, while Ghost finished off the last one with a quick swipe of its claws. In less than a minute, it was over. The clearing was silent again, save for the soft rustling of the jungle breeze. Darius lowered his rifle, his heart still racing from the adrenaline of the fight. He looked around at the fallen Volari soldiers, their silver armor already dulled by the jungle's dirt. Then he turned to Ghost, who was licking the blood from its paws, its violet eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Well, that went better than I expected," Darius muttered, walking over to Ghost and patting its side. The Critition let out a soft rumble of approval, nudging Darius with its massive head. Darius knelt beside one of the dead Volari soldiers, inspecting their equipment. Sure enough, they had been setting up a signal relay device that would have pinpointed Earth Alliance positions on the planet. Destroying it had likely bought the Alliance more time, but it also meant the Volari would soon realize something was wrong. "They're going to come looking for these guys," Darius said, frowning as he stood up. "We need to move." Ghost let out a soft growl, as if agreeing. Together, they disappeared back into the jungle, leaving the clearing behind. Later that night, back at their makeshift camp, Darius sat beside the fire, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The Volari were going to retaliate, that much was certain. The skirmishes on Caldera 5 had been growing more frequent, more intense. Rumor had it that Princess Zyra herself was stationed somewhere on the planet, overseeing operations. If that was true, it meant the stakes were higher than ever. Darius glanced at Ghost, who was lying beside the fire, its golden fur glowing in the flickering light. The Critician's eyes were closed, but Darius knew it wasn't asleep. Ghost was always alert, always ready. "What do you think, buddy?" Darius asked quietly. "Think we'll run into your old mistress soon?" Ghost opened one eye and let out a soft huff, as if to say it didn't matter. Darius chuckled. "Yeah, I guess you're right. She gave up on you, didn't she? Well, she's going to regret that." Darius leaned back, his thoughts growing darker. The more time he spent with Ghost, the more he realized just how powerful the bond between them had become. Ghost was no longer just a pet or an ally, he was family. And if Princess Zyra thought she could reclaim her former companion, she was in for a rude awakening. As the fire crackled and the jungle's strange noises filled the night, Darius made a silent vow. He would protect Ghost, no matter what. The Critician was his now, and together, they would face whatever the Volari threw at them. In the distance, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the dark horizon. A storm was coming, and Darius knew it wasn't just the weather. The war was about to get personal. The storm hit just before dawn. Dark clouds gathered over the jungle, blotting out the twin moons of Caldera 5, and the sky rumbled with distant thunder. Rain poured down in sheets, turning the forest floor into a thick mire of mud and debris. Darius, Kane, and Ghost pressed forward through the deluge, their mission clear: reach the Volari stronghold and capture Princess Zyra. The Earth Alliance had received intelligence that the Volari were preparing for a major offensive, and Zyra herself was overseeing the final preparations. Darius's team had been tasked with disrupting their operation, but that mission had taken on a deeply personal edge for him. Zyra was more than just another alien commander, she was the one who had abandoned Ghost to die. Ghost moved silently beside Darius, its fur soaked but its movements as graceful as ever. The rain didn't seem to bother the massive Critician, its sharp instincts were attuned to far more than the weather. Darius glanced at his companion, marveling again at the bond they had forged. Ghost had proven time and again to be more than a mere animal. He was a fighter, a protector, and, most importantly, a loyal friend. Now, they were about to face the one who had discarded him like a broken toy. They approached the edge of the Volari stronghold, a fortress hidden deep within the jungle, surrounded by a high-energy barrier and guarded by patrols of Volari soldiers. The fortress was a marvel of alien architecture, its towering spires gleaming silver against the dark sky, but it exuded an air of cold indifference, a fitting reflection of Zyra herself. Darius crouched low, using his binoculars to scout the area. His team had already infiltrated the perimeter, planting charges to take out the energy barrier. He tapped his communicator once, signaling his team. Moments later, a series of soft explosions echoed through the jungle, and the energy barrier flickered, then vanished. The path was open. "Showtime," Darius muttered, tightening his grip on his rifle. He looked at Ghost, who let out a low growl of anticipation. Together, they moved quickly and silently, weaving through the trees and slipping past the guards now scrambling in confusion. Darius had studied the layout of the fortress carefully, and he knew exactly where Zyra would be at the command center, orchestrating the Volari's next move. He had one chance to capture her and end this. As they approached the inner courtyard, the rain intensified, pounding against the metal structures of the fortress. Darius and Ghost took cover behind a cluster of alien foliage, watching as a group of Volari soldiers hurried past, unaware of their presence. Darius's pulse quickened. The command center was just ahead. He signaled Ghost to stay low as they crept closer. The Critician followed without hesitation, its violet eyes scanning the area for threats. They reached the entrance, a massive set of metal doors, guarded by 2 elite Volari warriors in full battle armor. Darius narrowed his eyes. These were no ordinary soldiers, they were Zyra's personal guard, loyal to her and her alone. He exchanged a glance with Ghost, then took a deep breath. "We take them down quick," he whispered. Before he could act, Ghost launched forward, a blur of gold and silver in the rain. The nearest Volari guard barely had time to react before Ghost pounced, its claws slashing through the alien's armor like it was paper. The second guard raised his weapon, but Darius was already in motion, firing a clean shot that dropped him instantly. The courtyard was clear. With Ghost by his side, Darius moved toward the doors. They slid open with a hiss, revealing the dimly lit interior of the command center. The room was vast, filled with holographic displays and alien consoles. At the far end, standing tall and regal, was Princess Zyra. Zyra didn't flinch as Darius and Ghost entered. Her violet eyes, so similar to Ghost's, were cold and calculating. She was dressed in a sleek, armored gown, her silver hair cascading down her back in elaborate braids. Her expression was one of disdain, as if Darius and his companion were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "So," Zyra said, her voice like ice, "the Earth Alliance sends a single soldier and a stolen pet to capture me. How predictable." Darius's grip tightened on his rifle, but he didn't raise it. He wasn't here just to capture her, he wanted answers. He wanted to know why she had abandoned Ghost, a creature so loyal and powerful. He wanted her to see that the animal she had discarded was now standing proudly at his side. "You left him to die," Darius said, his voice steady but laced with anger. "Why? Was he just a toy to you? Something you could throw away when he was no longer useful?" Zyra's eyes flicked to Ghost, and for the first time, something like recognition flashed across her face. "He is a Critician," she replied coolly. "Bred to serve royalty, yes. But when he failed to meet my expectations, he was no longer of value. I do not tolerate weakness." Darius took a step forward, his eyes blazing. "Weakness? He survived because of his strength. He's not weak, you are, for abandoning him." Ghost growled low in his throat, stepping forward to stand beside Darius, its eyes locked on the woman who had once been its mistress. Zyra's gaze hardened, but there was a flicker of something else, something like fear behind her icy facade. "You think you've tamed him?" Zyra sneered. "You think he's loyal to you? He's a creature of instinct, bred for battle. He belongs to me, and you will see that soon enough." Darius shook his head. "No. He's with me because he chose to be. You don't own him anymore." Zyra's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Is that so?" She lifted her hand, revealing a small device in her palm. "Let's see if that's true." Before Darius could react, Zyra pressed the device. A high-pitched frequency filled the room, and Ghost recoiled in pain, letting out a roar of anguish. Darius's heart sank as he watched the creature stumble, its eyes wide with confusion and fear. "You see?" Zyra said, her voice triumphant. "He is still mine." Ghost staggered, its body trembling as the device's signal worked to override its instincts. But even as the Critician faltered, Darius could see the struggle in its eyes. Ghost wasn't giving in, he was fighting. "No," Darius muttered, stepping closer to Ghost, placing a hand on the lion's side. "You're stronger than this, buddy. She doesn't control you anymore. You're free." For a moment, Ghost's eyes locked onto Darius's, and something shifted. The connection between them, forged through battle and trust, overwhelmed the artificial command Zyra was trying to impose. With a mighty roar, Ghost shook off the effects of the device, its eyes burning with fury. Zyra's smile faltered. "Impossible." Ghost advanced on Zyra, snarling, its massive form casting a long shadow across the room. Darius stepped forward as well, his rifle now aimed directly at the princess. "It's over, Zyra," Darius said, his voice cold. "You're coming with us." Zyra's eyes darted between Darius and Ghost, her cold confidence finally breaking. She took a step back, her fingers trembling around the device in her hand, but it was clear she had lost control. She had underestimated the bond between man and beast, and now she was paying the price. "You'll regret this," Zyra hissed, but her threat rang hollow. Darius nodded to Ghost, who let out a low growl but stayed by his side, eyes fixed on Zyra. The princess was defeated, her cruelty laid bare, and she knew it. As Alliance forces moved in to secure the command center and take Zyra into custody, Darius and Ghost stood together, watching as the once powerful princess was led away. The storm outside had calmed, but the war between the Earth Alliance and the Volari Dominion was far from over. Yet in that moment, Darius knew that they had won something far greater than a battle. Ghost, once a discarded pet, was now a proud and loyal companion. And Darius, once a lone soldier, had found a bond that transcended species, forged in the fires of battle and sealed with unshakable loyalty. Together, they walked out of the fortress into the calm, rain-soaked jungle, ready to face whatever came next. For they were more than just man and lion. They were an unstoppable alliance.